Okay, good morning. This is Christopher Barber with the Awaken Divergence podcast, and joining me today is Karli Travis. Karli has had some very intense traumatic experiences that I wanted to share today as creating a placeholder for the different intensities of trauma. Because one thing I have kind of come to a conclusion about is that some of my ADHD symptoms are actually based on traumas I experienced throughout my life. So, without further ado, welcome, Karli. And how has trauma shaped your life?
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So, I've had a few different experiences with trauma. What I focus on in my business and my practice is my trauma that I experienced in law enforcement and also the trauma of losing my mom without any warning, an accidental death, and just realizing. So I had lost my mom first, and then I had my officer involved shooting, and the two made me realize that how I felt after was very similar. So although losing someone close to you, people often refer to it as grief and grieving. I think when there's a trauma involved, and of course, losing somebody, no matter the time, is very hard. But when it comes to losing people unexpectedly, and especially young, too young to have, like, we have this vision of everybody living until their, 80s, 90s.
Hmm.
It's younger than that. If it's unexpected, it just brings an extra trauma piece to it. And so, with that being said, I tie the two together because of this. And so I can dive deeper on the actual event, but um, with my officer involved shooting, it was a near-death experience. So I saw my own life flash before my eyes, and I ultimately, a year and a half later, had to medically retire from law enforcement, which I had been almost 10 years in law enforcement. And so that has led me to have to completely change my life and my future. And so, with that being said, that's also a huge part of why I'm here. I think that, as you said, a lot of the symptoms that come from just storing trauma in our bodies, and what I saw in my first responder community of storing trauma, because you just have to move on, go to the next call. And I see relationships fail, and I see no emotion, I see numbness, I see just all of these different symptoms that we tend to just, brush under the rug and then wonder why we have one of the highest divorce rates in the world. So I just like to, my goal in my business is to bring awareness to everyone around me, whether it's work-related trauma or trauma in daily life or generational trauma, or experiencing that near-death experience of trauma. Just bring awareness to what could possibly be impacting them that they might not be fully aware of right now.
Awesome. That's that's so needed in the world today. Um, wow, a near-death experience. That's intense. I have not had traumatic experiences on that level. What did that do to you? Um, like, how did that impact your behaviors, your thoughts, your habits, your life? How'd that impact your life?
And so that's also why I am here today, because it was really hard for me to be one of the very few. You kind of think, especially in a profession like mine, that the people around you would understand. And that is not the case. And it's no ill will on them. It's because there's no way to understand unless you've actually been there. And oftentimes, the people who sign up for that kind of job, they go through this training and think that they will know exactly what to do and when to do it. So, how it impacted me is, first of all, I felt very isolated because initially I would show up to social events and I would have these conversations and people would ask me how I'm doing and I would say that I'm fine. And I would ask them something about themselves, and then my brain would just shut off. Like I would, especially when it was around people that were associated with my job, but also not, because it's almost like people are thinking about it. And but this is a trauma response. Nobody's probably thinking about it, and it's all in your head. It's just you being so hyper vigilant of how other people are responding to your trauma, and especially when it's so big and they feel bad, like you think that they're feeling bad, and you just can't, that connection for me, it it lessened when my mom died, and then it really lessened when I had my officer involved shooting. Um, and the cumulative traumas throughout my career, I think that kind of led me to this tipping point. But I also feel that so they say, like, in the wellness space right now, they talk a lot about toxins, and your body randomly has this toxin overload and it just can't handle it anymore. And it comes up as a chronic illness or something, other, other things. Well, that also happens with trauma. And I feel like people don't really realize that they have all this stored trauma, and the pain that they could be having is coming from this trauma. The lack of emotion. The lack of emotion is just so key to everything related with compressing and storing trauma and not releasing it from your body, because society tells us that having no emotion, if you can go throughout the day and you're not showing emotion, that's strength. Like, I went back to work 2 weeks after my mom had died. I had to plan and execute her funeral across the country within that amount of time, and I was back to work within 2 weeks. And I remember one of my lieutenants, who had been on the job for longer than anyone else in the building, is like, "I can't believe you're back already." And he's not, he's this Italian guy, like, no emotion, you push through. Just the last person on the planet that I would say would be surprised that I came back so quickly. But that's what I told myself I needed to do. Like, I either needed to carry on, and, or like my life was going to crumble down around me. Like, it was just, and so with that, just chip by chip, I was just taking away my emotions and my connections with people. So, and that was seen as strength in the moment. I'm back to work, right? I'm going through the motions and I'm continuing on. And that just is not healthy. And I wish that I had dealt with that.
Do you have any symptoms you could explain? Like, how did you know this was all compounding inside of you? What were some signs?
So there were a lot. I would get which I still from time to time can, because it can always come back up. But every single day, if I had any sort of hard conversation or felt my anxiety increasing, I would get blotchy all over, like my chest. Um, and then it got to the point after my shooting, that about a year after, and I'm still going to my medical appointments, all of that, my hands were turning bright dark purple. And
Whoa.
Yeah, like dark. And I have a gunshot wound to my hand. So my hand doctor, a hand doctor that I went to was like, oh, you have, what is it? Some retinoids, or I forget the actual name of it because I don't have it because
Yeah.
I healed myself. And, but he was like adamant that I had this, it's an autoimmune. And I was like, what? I'm like, no, I don't. But they were scary looking. Like they were so purple. And it finally, that was my breaking point, to be honest, because I was like embarrassed to go out to dinner because when I would pick up a glass, like I knew people could see my hand and how purple it was. So it was the anxiety, just underlying, you just think like I would sit at my desk because I was on light duty for a little while because you don't just retire, you have to try everything possible. And like my brain, like my eyes would get really dry, and like it was these physiological symptoms because I already touched on the hypervigilance, like I kept going, my lack of emotion, my lack of connection with others. I could have lost if I didn't have my significant other that already had been through his own trauma, life
Mhm.
trauma, we probably wouldn't be together today,
Wow.
hands
That's a
down.
blessing. That's truly a blessing that he had the knowledge to see what you were going through and like be there for you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. I was very surprised, and because he understood what I was going to be feeling before I did. And that was so powerful. So chronic inflammation, like I'd wake up and just be super puffy, oh, night sweats, like bad night sweats. So that was the thing when I was going to therapy, because I did go to therapy for a period of time. And she would ask me, have you had any nightmares? And I could never remember what my dreams were when I woke up, but I was like I would sweat profusely randomly, random nights. There was one dream. So PTSD is also just, it's kind of this thing where people think it's just like flashbacks and you can see so vividly something that like involves your trauma. And to me, I think personally, how it showed up was just different. There would be times where I would drive certain places and still, because I don't need to go back to work. So I did stop some of my reintegrating things into my life because I never need to drive down that street ever again. Like I'm safe now. I used to think I might have to. So I I realized that just because I wasn't remembering my dreams doesn't mean I wasn't having them. Like
True.
waking up in full sweat does not happen naturally. Like I'm not hitting menopause. It's not my hormones because it has since stopped. Since I have healed myself, it has stopped. But according to like a DSM or the DSM-5, it was I wasn't remembering my dreams, so it wasn't associated with anything I'd been going through.
Ooh, interesting connection.
Yeah.
Interesting connection.
Yeah. Yeah, so my heart racing, I'm still filling you in on all the different symptoms I had. I actually should have probably prepared for that because it's just so long that as I'm talking about it, I'm remembering more and more. But yeah, heart racing randomly, and just sometimes it's not that exact situation that makes your heart start racing. It could be people talking about a day that was close to that date. Like
Wow.
the date. And I was around people who were talking about their wedding that I knew happened the day before, and that triggered me. And that's all it took. So,
Would you find you were more distractible, lost in your thoughts a lot, brain
mhm.
foggy?
Oh yes. Oh my gosh, I didn't even touch on memory.
Okay,
Yeah.
go for it.
See, that's what I mean. I'm like, um, the memory is just gone. I still to this day, because I just don't trust 100%. I think I'm doing better with my memory, but I needed my um my first written calendar like started after my shooting, kind of after my mom, but I had healed from my mom. So because I did do a lot of work with my mom and knowing how those symptoms arose, it really did give me stepping grounds as to what to do after my shooting.
Hmm.
But also how I knew that what was happening in therapy just wasn't doing, I still had these symptoms that just weren't getting associated with my trauma. And I knew it was part of my trauma. So brain fog, like the inability to remember words, it just, my body, you can be stuck in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, whatever your certain reaction to the trauma is, you can be stuck in that. And so I was stuck in fight. So I fought until the end and I was stuck there. Like just anything could bring me up here where other people could definitely freeze and just you're disassociated from everything in life, everyone in life. You're going through the motions, you're hyper vigilant because you're just working, but you're not. You're just frozen. You're
Yeah. Well, that's where it's very interesting what you're saying here, because let's look at ADHD. Task paralysis sounds like freeze. Overreactivity to insignificant things sounds like you're simmering in a fight response, and all it takes is that one thing, which I lived,
Mhm.
to kick it off. But however, just like you, it took the experience of me getting off of my medication for me to rip off the band-aid, to start feeling things and then realize, whoa, 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 whoa. I've been living in a fight response due to what happened when I was younger.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I grew up in an environment where I had to be in a fight response, and that just became normal.
Hmm.
But then the scary part about it, which I'm glad you recognized it and were able to start working on your healing, but most people don't, is people start associating that trauma response as who you are.
Hmm.
Oh, you are the overreactive one. You are the distracted one. You are the paralysis one. And it's like, no,
Hmm.
that can be changed. You can heal it. It is not locked into your story forever.
Hmm. Yes, 100%. You can heal it. And I think that the generational trauma or the cumulative traumas really it does without any work in your healing journey with that or acknowledgement that things have happened that have kind of constructed who you even believe you are
Yes.
in the moment, and it just takes that realization to be like, no, I'm not actually super reactive. I'm not distracted by a million things. Like it's because I can't live in the moment because in childhood I was always thinking about the next place I was gonna be have to move to and the next time we have to pack and the next school you have to go to. And starting from scratch again, it's just yeah, so true.
Or is mom and dad gonna blow up randomly, and my quote unquote safety for my parents is gone?
Hmm.
And then what do I do? And then
Hmm.
that happens over and over, because your parents, or let's say someone else in your family, they haven't healed the trauma, and it's just response after response after response, and then you're just accumulating that because you as a child, you just take in. You don't know how to deflect. You don't know how to like discharge it. And
Hmm.
it's interesting, Karli. because in nature, animals know how to do this. This is why animals tremble because
Mhm.
they're dissipating the traumatic energy in them. For our listeners, what are some things like we've kind of gone over what are some of the symptoms of the trauma? What are some basics for healing?
So I think that it definitely depends on what kind of trauma you're trying to heal from. Um, but some of the tools that I have used are body mapping type, the ability to really connect with your body. So it sounds woo-woo of like me seriously asked me a couple years ago and I would be like, absolutely not. That's silly to wake up every morning and do somatic exercises but getting in tune with your body, like I can feel when my stress is starting to increase because my chest starts to burn. And so this is a perfect example. I'm laying in bed, can't really sleep last night. And what do? You breathe. And I was like, oh, wow, my lips are tight. Like you just dive, you go throughout your entire body, head to toe, releasing that tension. And you fall asleep in the midst of doing that. And that is just something that I would never have done before. I mean, I have my ritual every single day. I do certain things that help my mental health. Does it seem selfish? Absolutely. Are
Yeah.
relationships no longer a part of this new lifestyle that you're living? Absolutely. I'm not saying that you need or should be connected to certain people that you once were, when it comes to emotional shutdown and stuff. But you are able to clearly identify who's good for you now and who's not now because you are a different.
So Karli, with in the law enforcement in the first responder community, I'm sure a lot of people are diagnosed with ADHD or probably have ADHD symptoms. But from talking to you, I feel like that's more of like their body kind of screaming like, I have unprocessed trauma,
Mhm.
in the behaviors. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that that is absolutely true. There's a lot of ADHD symptoms that are all over a police department because we're just distracting ourselves, right? With everything that's not important and so with that, a lot of people are like, I can't get they don't finish what they start a lot of the time. And some people could call it laziness. Some people could call it inability to do their job. But I think a lot of the time it's because they're just trying to distract themselves with something other than the untimely death that they just had to respond to and had to tell a parent that they lost their child or a child that they lost their parent, and then go back to headquarters and act like everything's fine. And
Wow,
we're just,
intense.
yeah, it's like I'll never forget my first dead body, but I've never thought of it as trauma. I've have always thought of it as just my job. And so my first untimely death, I get there, and for anonymity's sake, I'm gonna keep the gender and everything neutral. But I get there, and a teenager meets me at the door with throw up all over their mouth, and their parent was upstairs, and they had overdosed. And you could tell that their parent had you can tell, the color of people's skin. You know what they look like. He was, they were still warm. And so I just felt for this teenager, he was trying to give him mouth to mouth. And I was just like, but I never thought of it as trauma. I just thought of it as another day. And so, and we all do that. And that's just one of a million things I could tell you. And I didn't work at the busiest department, and it's not just with my job, it's with really stressful jobs too. It can be your higher ups holding you to such standards that you can't reach them. And every day it's like fighting to, you know, be stable in your job because you're worried that you could get fired because you're not meeting the standards that they want you to meet, which are unattainable. And so you're just living in this constant state of stress that can also induce these. I believe that they are very aligned with trauma response of this constant state of stress because, right, that's a constant state of fighting. You're
Yes.
fighting.
I live that every day in my job. I see it in the management I work with. I see it in the senior engineers I work with.
Mhm.
Basically, like the unachievable standards, the relentless just, oh, we're late again. We're late again. Getting yelled at from customers and stuff like that, or getting yelled at by upper management. This is prolific in all industries,
Mhm.
and it creates trauma. And we think that, like, then we just think that somebody over time receiving this, like, oh, they're distracted, they're just not performing to where they need to be. And then they end up getting like fired and just think that they're broken. And like, it's like,
Mhm.
no, no, we live in a society where we are not taught how to heal ourselves when we can.
Mhm.
We
Exactly.
are not taught the basic, we're taught how to read, write, and arithmetic. We're
Mhm.
taught how to model our parents'
Mhm.
bad habits. We're
Mhm.
taught to do all these other things, except for the one thing we need to learn the most, which is how to heal. How to heal is probably as important as like how to truly love and listen to someone else.
Mhm. Yeah. So to tie that back with the ADHD thing as well in the workplace, that can make you feel like you have ADHD. You're trying to
Yes.
meet standards that a normal person cannot meet, but society tells us that we're supposed to like start a business, be profitable, and like be a millionaire within 3 days. Like that's
Yeah.
not reality. And that type of conditioning can absolutely make you feel that you're not normal because other people around you, they say, are doing it, but they're not. So it can totally lead you down this path of something's not right with me, something's wrong with me. And with healing, and I think that in the ADHD world too, grounding, that is the biggest thing that I have taken away from my healing is being able to take a breath because you're so heightened all the time. You're always trying to achieve, achieve, achieve with ADHD, with trauma,
Or just
hyper.
try to function.
Yeah,
Like
just
for both, for trauma or ADHD, just basic functioning.
basic. Yeah. But you're ignoring all of these underlying symptoms that are coming up in your body because you can't even feel them because you're just numb to it all. So starting with identifying these sensations within your body, how you breathe, how you sleep, how you eat. It can be so many different things, but identifying them, like when you do go to work and you're thinking that you're a failure at work, what comes up? Happens to your heart rate? What happens to your body temperature? Really going deep and identifying those triggers so that when you feel them come on, because now you've identified them, so then you feel them coming on and you know how to bring yourself back and you know what calm is. And that is just something that people in both of our specialties just don't know what comments.
Yes. And the biggest problem is we just try to patch over it with medications,
Mhm.
which can further exacerbate the fight response that you're living in,
Mhm.
um,
Absolutely.
and make your reactivity even more intense. Um, and okay, I think Karli, like this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed getting this perspective of what severe trauma is like, but then you can have the same severity of symptoms from compounded trauma from your experiences, but then those can manifest as symptoms of ADHD.
Mhm.
They can also manifest as anxiety, depression, like
Exactly.
all those things. Or even, I know from deep trauma perspective, they could manifest as like cancers or sicknesses, illnesses. Like you just showed us, your hands turned like you had a physical response to your trauma.
Yeah. And the inflammation, key, it's the key root cause of cancer, of chronic illness. And inflammation comes with this constant stress. Stress lives in our body, in our butt, or in our, please edit that,
Okay.
in our gut. I don't know where that came from.
Okay. Let's give you a count of five. One, two, three, four, five. Go.
Trauma lives in our, it's not just an emotional response. It lives in our gut, it lives in our body, it can increase inflammation. And yes, those types of autoimmune disease, cancers, chronic illnesses, they can absolutely come up because the root cause has not been found. And so, with you saying the medication thing, a quick story is during my recovery from my officer involved shooting, I had to get hip surgery. About a month later, I was still non-weight bearing from my hip surgery. And I went to this doctor who can kind of do everything. And it was about 8 months after my incident. I had already been going to my therapist. She could prescribe me anything if she thought I needed it, but we never talked about medication because I've always been so anti-medication. But with this other doctor, he wasn't my therapist. We didn't talk about me not being happy. I have been literally laying on a bed for a month because I can't move because I had to get hip surgery due to a near-death experience that I had prior. And he sums up our appointment with, "Have you ever thought about taking antidepressants?" And I'm like, wait, what? Like, it is normal to not be normal right now. I never said I was sad. I never said, like, I never said I was suicidal. I never said all these things. And then all of a sudden, depression, like, no, I don't want that. Never went back to him. And I said, I'm already seeing a therapist, but if I didn't know better and I started taking those meds, it would have been so hard to get off of them. And it would be masking different things that I needed to feel in order to heal. Because you can't heal without feeling. And medications can often just numb you to what's really going on inside. And I know that the gut and the body have so much to do with ADHD too. It's just very
Yeah.
aligned.
It's just, I mean, I'm glad we're having this conversation. We're speaking up about it, and we need to continue to speak up about it. Where can people find you on social media?
They can find me on Instagram at Rebuilt After Trauma. My business name is Rooted Resilience LLC. And on my Instagram, there is a link there where they can actually reach me or DM me. Um, I haven't started on any other major platforms as of yet. Instagram is my main go-to.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, Karli, thank you so much for sharing your experience today. Wow, that was powerful. And maybe we'll talk again on the podcast. This is definitely a topic that I'm going to be going over in my Trinity 1.0 program because it's very key to the whole ADHD thing. But thank you again. And everyone, please reach out to Karli if you know, like from what we've talked about, if you're seeing the signs and symptoms of trauma, please reach out to her. She can really help you heal. Thank you so much, Karli.
Thank you for having me.